Cairo, Seattle.
This is Fight, an MMA podcast with Bob Stelton and Danny O'Neill. Insight and analysis from every angle.
You can't dispute the results.
The fights.
That was the biggest pay-per-view card in the history of the UFC.
Fighters.
We're here with Carlos Condit. He joins us.
Uriah, how you doing, man?
Doing good. How are you?
And everything from the world of mixed martial arts. It's time for Fight.
The next big thing. It's something I would say that pro wrestling has been built around that, of finding the next guy that's going to be able to carry a promotion. The UFC, mixed martial arts in general, and the UFC in particular, has not been beholden to that, creating the next big contender. They've got a pretty organic way things come through, yet you hear news this week that Greg Hardy is going to consider himself an MMA prospect. And this is one of the first times I can remember a guy, I guess maybe Lesnar was similar, but Lesnar was a college wrestler.
Right.
Lesnar had a very established pedigree. Mm-hmm. We just saw CM Punk.
Who had no pedigree.
No, and it was a little bit different, and there wasn't quite. This is the first time I've seen a really high-level professional athlete dangle this out as, oh, I'm going to focus on this now, and we'll see what happens.
Well, we saw it with Michael Westbrook, who was a creep in the NFL, who was most notorious for beating up Stephen Davis when he wasn't looking out there at practice, if you remember that.
I do. It was a really ugly scene.
It was really vicious and ugly, so he decided to take that viciousness to the cage, and I think he had might have had around 8 fights or so.
Yeah. He was okay.
He was all right. Didn't do much. I know Kendall Gill was boxing. I actually went to a couple of his fights.
How was he?
He actually was not a bad boxer.
No
I was
kidding.
surprised. Surprised.
It's funny because he was never considered a super tough guy. In fact, he was kind of a pretty boy in the NFL. In the NBA.
Yeah.
In the NBA, out of Illinois, and then played some time with
I saw him fight when I lived in Chicago.
Yeah, with the Sonics here, he played with them.
Yeah, and so you've seen Herschel Walker make the transition. You've seen guys go to boxing, whether it was Ed Too Tall Jones or Lyle Alzado, different NFL players trying to find something else, and generally it doesn't work.
Who was that USC receiver that just got destroyed?
Johnny
Morton?
Yep.
And he just got crushed.
Destroyed.
Yeah.
And I think most people are hoping that's what we see with Greg Hardy, that he gets his skull flattened. He's a bad guy. He's not a good guy. It's not about I didn't like him as a player at Sports 8. No, he's a guy that's, his biggest claim to fame is his domestic violence and his lack of contrition when he was called on it, right? He had so many opportunities to come out and say, you know what, I don't have an excuse for what I did. I don't expect anybody to forgive me. All I can do is try to kind of go the Ray Rice route. And I'm not excusing Ray Rice on any level, but you want to see somebody who's contrite, he's contrite. Greg Hardy was the opposite. And he kind of worked his way out of the league at 27, 28, when he's still probably an elite level player. Nobody wants to mess with the guy. Nobody wants anything to do with him. So now he's going to turn his attention to the world of MMA. And I saw some great jokes online, people saying, yeah, he wanted to fight MMA until he found out he was going to have to fight men. Instead of he wanted to try to get into Invicta, and they said no, so he's not going to fight. They mess with him that way. I think he's going to be a pariah there too, even though the world of MMA doesn't have a bunch of choir boys there, and there have been those fighters that have had domestic issues as well. I don't know that anybody has come in with that resume. It's sort of developed while they were there.
It's Fight. It's an MMA podcast. I'm Danny O'Neill, along with Bob Stelton. We've got a guy who is fighting his way up the ranks, and Brett Knopp, who is a local fighter, someone who played at the University of Washington, was a walk-on the football team, made the transition, and is now, his professional career is now 5-6 years old. He had an extensive amateur career. We'll talk to him about that process of how you get going. It'll be, as MMA becomes more prominent, as the paydays become bigger. And there's reports CM Punk might have made $500,000 for that. Mm-hmm. Certainly Brock Lesnar.
Well, that's just the reported payday.
Correct. Lesnar got a significant chunk of money just for his most recent one-off fight that he had at UFC 200. As that happens, we're going to see more guys with non-traditional MMA background. We're going to see other prominent professional athletes and or celebrities who become involved and dip their toe in, because there's a little bit, and the UFC and the other promotions are going to have to strike this balance between what is freak show and marketable and what is actual legitimate professional competition and marketable.
My hope is the UFC leaves that to others, right? We've talked about this before. They've dipped their toe in it, whether it was James Toney and Randy Couture or CM Punk or even Brock Lesnar to a certain extent. Had the freak show element to it. allowing somebody to fight that wasn't really worthy of fighting. I'm hoping, like in this case, that they leave it to Bellator. Somebody will sign him. Somebody will sign him because he has a name. People know who Greg Hardy is. So whether it's World Series of Fighting or whether it's Bellator or ONE FC, one of these promotions will say, I can make money off of this guy being the villain. People will tune in because they want to see him win or they want to see him get his butt kicked. But people will tune in because there's a curiosity factor. I hope it's not the UFC. I would like to see them hold themselves above that.
Jose Canseco fight MMA?
He did.
Did he
Hong
fight?
Man Choi.
No, it was Hong Man Choi. It was the 7-foot Korean.
Yeah, and then he hurt his knee in the fight and basically tapped out.
Yeah, Hong Man Choi, who was really himself a freak show fighter over in Japan with pride. He's never fought over here, has he? I don't think he's fought in the States.
I don't think so.
I don't remember him doing that. He also did he box Vi Sikahema?
Yeah,
was that
he's
celebrity
got the brains
boxing?
beaten in.
Yeah,
he got his ass handed to him.
So you certainly don't want to see the UFC go that way, but the also part of how you develop and market and train. I think the UFC has developed a mechanism to do that with its reality shows.
Right.
It's created a star-making vehicle, and in many ways, The Ultimate Fighter, that reality show, which is now it's past 20 seasons now. Is this 23? The one that's going on?
It's unbelievable.
Where they've got the champion from Third and Pine here in Seattle to see if he can. He is the undisputed global champion of Third and Pine in Seattle.
You go up another block, there's another belt
that's there. But that idea of how you market and develop fighters, because that's going to become a challenge for the UFC, especially as they've expanded their television product. They've got a lot of time to fill, and we've got a great card coming up at UFC 205. But frankly, there's some cards where they don't have enough.
No, they don't. But I think they've made inroads with, like, Dana's series Looking for a Fight, where he travels around the country with Matt Serra, and they go to these local promotions, and that's where they found Mickey Gall. That's where they found Sage Northcutt. You know, so they are out there scouting talent to bring it in, and it's so far you could say it's been fairly successful. You've got two guys that are relevant, right? And Gall made his name off beating up CM Punk. We'll see. He wants to fight Sage Northcutt now
because he thinks that dude is corny.
He thinks he's corny.
I think he's mad corny.
Did he call him Sage Cornnut?
Is that what it was?
I think it was. Yeah, something along those lines. But I mean, so they're finding ways to bring in new talent, the Ultimate Fighter show, things like that. But yeah, they are in a position where we've got a lot of spots to fill, and you're probably going to see guys on there going, "How did this guy make it in here?" You're not going to see it at the level of CM Punk. He had a name. Business-wise, you understand it, but I'd like to see those be the really few and far between moments for that promotion. I think they need to hold themselves to a higher standard. Let Bellator do it. They've done it with Kimbo Slice and Dada 5000, that ridiculous thing. Seeing, the geriatric circuit with Shamrock and Gracie. They are very open to doing those things. So let Hardy be the freak show for Bellator.
Yeah. Can we send Bisping over there too? or does that not happen? I guess he doesn't qualify as a freak show. He's got the most UFC wins of anybody.
I know.
That's disgusting. Like, that is absolutely horrible. I
Especially for you, because you can't stand him.
I hate him. I hate his fighting style. I hate his attitude.
I guess we'll never have him on as a guest.
No, we can bring him on, and I'll tell him. But You'll also
tell him, Michael, I kind of hate you.
I thoroughly dislike you. I detest your professional decision making. I hate the fact that you're a point fighter, that you don't usually hurt anyone that you fight. Like, that's the typical Michael Bisping fight, is exactly what we saw against Dan Henderson. He's tough. I'll give him that. He's tough, and he'll get his brains beat in, and he'll keep coming back like the mindless Brit he is. But he doesn't ever move forward. At what point? Somebody was asked, were you shocked of the decision? No, I'm not. Because I've seen him win fights he didn't win before in England. Matt Hamill. Like, that was absolute joke of a decision.
I didn't think he beat Silva.
Yeah, I didn't think he beat Anderson Silva either. I didn't mind that one because I was kind of sick of seeing that version of Anderson Silva. Like, I wanted to see him. But the sort of things, on the flip side, I thought he might have beat Chael Sonnen in that fight that was on a Saturday night card. But the fight there, it was so unfulfilling. It was the most unfulfilling championship fight I can remember.
This one with Henderson?
Yes. Oh, it was awful.
I thought you would have loved it because he got pounded. He almost got knocked out in the first round. He looked like he was out for a quick second before he hit the canvas and kind of regained his bearings. And Hendo was unable to land that second punch that he did the first knockout, right? He hit him with that right hand. He goes down. You saw him drop down with that same right hand, and he missed. And he was able to land a nice elbow or two in there, but just couldn't quite get that finishing shot that he did the first time. I thought it was entertaining because it was kind of back and forth. I mean, he got up. All right, he's bleeding. His eyes swollen.
I liked that part.
And he's waving him on. I got to give Bisping credit. He's kind of waving him on like, all right, let's go. And he wasn't running.
Come on after me.
He wasn't running.
He wasn't running, but he wasn't moving forward either. He's a counterpuncher.
He is a counterpuncher, but he was taking it. Henderson was kind of waiting to be the counterpuncher. He was, if you really watch it objectively, Danny. The operative word being objectively. And I'm not a huge Bisping fan. I like him as a guy. I've talked to him a bunch. He's a nice guy. I don't love him as a fighter. But he was aggressive in those rounds that he won. He was the one that was pushing the action because Dan was kind of moving around. He was scooting to the left, scooting to the right, sliding left and right, and he had that right. He was just looking for that right hand. And the guy that was throwing the punches and moving forward was Bisping. I hate to say it, but it was true.
Did he ever come close to finishing Henderson?
No.
And
not even close.
And that's
even close.
That's my fundamental objection to him, and to a lesser extent, someone like Dominic Cruz. They're point fighters. They're guys.
Dominic is much more of a point fighter than Bisping.
Yes, they're guys that land punches. They don't really do that much damage. They work at good angles. Mm-hmm. They're striking. They know how to work angles at striking, and they stay out of harm's way. But it creates, to me, what I love. Go be a boxer if you're that. Because that's the art form that's designed for exactly what they do, of guys that don't have a lot to offer on the ground, don't want to take it down there, and they just want to land strikes over the course of a 5-round, 3-round fight. Go box. This is for guys that try to finish fights.
Right.
That's what MMA is about, in my mind. And you get into different things of you can have a clash in styles that produces a non-compelling fight. You can have a guy that's kind of the lay and pray and functions like a blanket and just holds the guy down without ever really advancing it. And to me, the most boring fighter, more than the lay and pray guy, is the guy that's just flicking jabs out there. It's like, land something. Hit someone. You're like the Michael Chang of MMA, just like launching ground strokes. Hit a winner. Hit a winner.
Some guys don't have the pop.
Yeah, then go do something else. Go make donuts.
So you're saying unless you can knock somebody out with 1 or 2 shots, you've got no business in the sport.
I just don't want to watch you. Like maybe just have maybe we have a point fighting division for all these guys. For all you little yokels that can't knock anybody out, who can't bust a grape when you throw punches.
Because I'll tell you, one of my favorite fighter is not a big puncher, and John Jones.
Oh, that's true. But John finishes fights.
He cuts guys up. He'll tap you out. He'll hit you with those elbows. He'll kind of beat guys up over 5 rounds. He's never knocked anybody out with 1 punch ever.
But he's such a good fighter, and he finishes dudes. He finishes everybody.
Typically, yeah, for the most part. I mean, he's gone to a few decisions, obviously, but he's not a big puncher. Daniel Cormier made fun of his lack of punching power and things like that, and others have said that, but he's found a way to make it entertaining.
You know what? Okay, I'm going to have to revise it, because it's not that you need to be able to knock guys out. It's that you need to be able to have something. This is how you finish fights. The quintessential way that this guy finishes fights. With Jones, it would be his chokes, right? Whether
it could be anything. I mean,
holding Lyoto Machida up against the head, up against the cage in that standing guillotine, all of the different stuff. You have to have a way where you're like, this dude finishes fights, not he's a professional decision maker out of Britain.
You're just seeing the bias right here. This is just it's just his overall hate of Michael Bisping and everything that he is.
Maybe my dream is that Conor McGregor goes up to fight him.
I don't think that's going to happen.
You don't think so?
He's too small.
Well, but he might be able to beat Bisping. Bisping couldn't knock him out. I think Bisping doesn't hit as hard as a Diaz.
I don't know. Ask Rockhold how hard he hits.
That's true.
Come on, man. You got to give him a little bit of credit.
Nah, I think I'm not going to. That's going to be kind of the gag here.
All right.
We've got Brett Knopp, who is a local fighter, trains with Matt Hume at AMC Pancration. He's going to get in the cage with us next. It's brought to you by Emerald Queen Casino, which is exactly where Knopp's going to be fighting a little more than a week away. It's Fight, an MMA podcast. I'm Danny O'Neill along with Bob Stelton, and we're joined today by Brett Knopp. Brett, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
It's a pretty cool opportunity. This episode we've been talking about kind of how you make your way up the ranks in MMA and what this is like, not just from a competition perspective, but also from some of the business decisions and challenges you guys have faced. What sort of fueled your desire to compete and progress in this sport?
Well, I always wanted to do fighting ever since growing up as a kid, watching it on pay-per-view. The early fights, like where it was just kind of like nobody really knew the sport because it wasn't like mainstream. It was really, like kind of like nobody wanted to watch it. It's just, a couple people on, I don't know. It's just, so it wasn't shown.
No, it wasn't. Which fights do you remember watching? Because I remember being with a group of buddies. We were in college and we watched the first one. Which was really more oriented like a freak show. It was
that's the perfect thing, the freak show.
Yeah, it was the 300-pound sumo wrestler getting his teeth kicked out by the karate guy from Europe.
I think they could even like punch in the balls.
Yeah, they could.
Anything went pretty much.
Joe
right?
Son found that out. It was like the series of a guy named Keith Hackney who did not look that intimidating, landing about 5 straight groin strikes to poor Joe Son.
But yeah, ever since watching that, I just fell in love with the sport. I knew I always wanted to do it. And then how do you train for it? This was like 20 years ago. There was no gyms around really to train.
And then you played football at the UW.
Yeah, so I went on with the football. Walked on at University of Washington. I didn't really play. I was a walk on. Got a couple of plays.
That's awesome.
A couple of tackles recorded, but I'm 5'11". I played D-line. I'm not a prototype lineman, for college.
And then how did you start training in MMA after your football career?
Oh, I was just finding, like I'm very competitive and I just want something to fill the void. And, I just always knew I wanted to fight. Football was over. Then I gradually just shifted over there. Bob Sapp at that time, he played at University of Washington, big time player. He was just, doing his career and fighting, and I knew him. And just talked to him, and he told me about AMC and Matt Hume, and I knew I always wanted to train there, and that would be my coach. And then I just went to work and took it for what it was, and it got to where I am now.
Hume's training of Bob Sapp is so funny because he drives Matt Hume absolutely up a wall because he'll describe how lazy Bob is.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta force him to do the stuff.
So. How natural was it, having not fought? You played football, and MMA was fairly new at that point, and it feels like most fighters come from some sort of discipline. Like, I used to be a wrestler, or I used to box, or I was in karate, or some sort of discipline. Did you have any of that in your background?
I didn't have any of it. I was just a hard worker. I walked on at University of Washington. That's just mental fortitude. One thing I do have, and I want to do that, and I'll learn how to do it. Being aggressive like a football player is kind of not like fighting. You got to be tactical and you got to be calm and rely on your technique, not just like go hard. So I had to learn how to, I can't use my strength because I was always strong, monster in the weight room. But in fighting, it's not about that. It's about doing the techniques, relying on that, and, waiting patiently. Instead of, like 30 seconds a play, or 10 seconds a play's over, you know what I'm saying?
Is there an aspect that was more natural to you? I mean, I've called a couple of your fights. You seem to obviously prefer standing up. Like you like to get in there and just trade. I don't know I don't know that I've actually seen you really work jiu-jitsu on the ground. I don't know how comfortable you are or aren't with that, but is there an area that feels more comfortable to you?
I'm a man-human fighter. We're all around fighters. Just as good on the ground as standing, but I love the stand. I really want the knockout. There's a little bit about, pleasing the fan. They want to see knockouts. I'm good at it. I got a good chin. I get coached by some of the best coaches at stand-up. But as far as being on the ground is not a big deal. I think maybe from football, I like that aggressiveness of the striking.
Well, you're certainly not afraid of it. Anybody that's seen you fight.
Playing defensive line, I wasn't afraid about going against big old linemen, 300-pounders, 6'5", when I was, 230, 240, 5'11". So I just jump in there, heads going, hands blazing.
We've seen a lot of football players attempt to make the transition to MMA. Most recently, there's the discussion of Greg Hardy and if he's going to do that. But other guys, I mean, Matt Mitrione had a college football career and played a little bit in the pros.
Michael Westbrook tried it for a while.
Westbrook tried it. Who else? St. Preux was
Tennessee.
He was a player at Tennessee. But for the most part, guys that try it, it doesn't stick with them. What do you think the biggest challenge for someone trying to make that transition? Because naturally, I think a lot of people look at it like you've got the size, although it's not really the same because you have challenges with your weight in MMA that you don't face in football. What do you think the biggest challenges for guys trying to make that jump are?
I think, like that good college athlete or pro athlete, I think he's just born with these gifts and qualities, and he just succeeds just for who he is. But fighting is more about that. It's not about that. It's about hard work, learning the techniques day in, day out, putting in your 5-6 years of actually developing a game. Well, football, it's just who can run the fastest, who's bigger, pretty cut and dry. So you can get away with succeeding without putting in that hard work. So if you don't have that grit and that discipline, then you're gonna get nowhere in fighting.
We were talking to you before we started rolling here, and you're an electrical engineer. So I'm just curious, where does this fall in the grand scheme? Is the dream to be in the UFC and do this for a living, or is this kind of fun right now, but you've got the electrical engineering to fall back on, or how do you view your MMA career?
Well, I think electrical engineering was just another thing I achieved in the process of where I'm going. It was hard work. I graduated from University of Washington, one of the top schools in electrical engineering. I walked on and played football at the same time, so I did two things at once. It's just testifying that I'm in the finish, whatever I try to do, and this is just the next challenge of my life. I think it prepared me, just never take no for an answer, just keep going, charging.
Are you full-time? You're fighting full-time
right now? I'm full-time fighting, that's correct.
So the dream would be, obviously, to get to the highest level.
Yeah, for sure. My goal is to be the best mixed martial artist that I can achieve, and once I do that, then everything else will just fall into place.
You also had an extensive amateur career. I was looking a couple different.
That's correct.
Yeah, like 26 amateur fights, I think, but it was by one count that I saw.
Yep, that's correct.
What did you learn from that process? Because a lot of guys, we saw CM Punk just fight. He didn't even have an amateur career. What did you learn through amateur fighting?
I learned ringmanship. I learned just all aspects of my game, because sometimes I got exploited in my fights. Sometimes I didn't. I learned that I can fight. Like now, 5-5s is nothing. So I've been through a lot of wars and decisions, and that stuff you can only get by going through those fights and those motions. Well, like CM Punk, he doesn't have any of that. So even as a pro, when I step in, I got 20 fights probably on whoever I fight. If the guy has 10 fights, I got way more, and he just doesn't unless he really researches that, he doesn't realize that I really have all the experience on him.
You got 9 pro fights. I think it's a 7-1 record with one no contest.
That's correct.
What you also looking at? There was about a 2-year gap between fights for you. Was that injury or
no? It was sorry, that it was an injury. It's my coach. Matt Hume is one of the best in the world at the business, and it's him saying get better. Mm-hmm. So I spent 2 years exploring myself. I started working with Curtis Schuster, a K1 level striker, and we spent 2 years just working on striking, and then everything about MMA with Matt, and just getting better so I can compete at the highest level. And if I ever get there, it won't be a problem. We'll just do it.
And you came back from that layoff December 2015. How have you changed as a fighter?
I'm a more technical striker. I used to be just a brawler, like hard-nosed fighter, not caring about getting hit, not having a tactical game plan when I strike, to like really being more polished and understanding how to generate my powers from what angles, minimizing getting hit.
As far as, and you talked about going through these wars, and like I said, I've been on the call for a couple of them, and it is very pleasing to the fan. It's back and forth. There's blood. There's a lot of action, but that style doesn't lend itself to a really long career. And I'm curious, you just touched on it a bit. Is that what Matt was seeing? Saying, listen, man, you can't stay in there and take this kind of punishment fight after fight. You've got to be able to give angles and learn defense and learn how to slip some of these punches instead of taking them.
You're kind of right. Matt was more talking about just become a world-class fighter before you fight world-class. A lot of people just jump in there and are put into the world-class fights like CM Punk, but he's not a world-class fighter. It's just a freak show. Mm-hmm. He needs to put in his time. But Curtis Schuster, my striking coach, he's a tough guy, similar build. He's a heavyweight kickboxer. He's like, no, you can't just rely on your head. You got to minimize the damage, find the angles, and do it smart. He was big on that. So, yeah, you're right. And also Matt will agree on it. But he was more, just developing, becoming better.
But he agrees, don't take punches if you don't have to.
Yeah, it's the dumbest thing you could do.
You mentioned Matt Hume. He's had, and I think people around here know in Seattle, the legacy of fighters he's had. Right now, Demetrius Johnson is one of the guys that trains with him. Chris Lieben's been out there. Hayuto Sakurai, going back to high-level Japanese fighters.
And Josh Barnett.
Yeah, Barnett was there as well. What have you learned? What is he like as a coach for you?
He's a demanding coach of excellence. Like, he's never going to tell you you're doing something right. He's going to always tell you, criticize in a positive way what you're doing wrong and correct it. And it speaks for itself. He's probably the only coach to produce from scratch a heavyweight and lightest fighter, world champion in the world. And that just shows it doesn't matter what type of guy that is, he can make it happen.
What do you think when you see, I don't know if you watch like The Ultimate Fighter and guys that are young guys trying to come up and they're getting that TV time in these fights, and everybody's got a different path. And I'm just curious, the path you're taking. We had Josh Barnett in studio when there was the team versus team. He came through town and we had him in here, and he was talking about you and said, man, he's got talent, he's got ability, but he doesn't want to leave here. He doesn't want to take that next step. Like I'm paraphrasing, but he was kind of calling this like, you feel comfortable here and you don't want to get out of your comfort zone. First of all, do you buy into that at all? And second of all, do you feel like this is the proper path, or do you feel like you're going to have to take a step somewhere else in order to achieve what you ultimately want to achieve?
Obviously, I got to take the step, but that's not my call. I don't make that call. My coach makes that call. And if he thinks I'm ready to do it, we'll go do that. And I'll do whatever my coach says. If he says fight tomorrow, I'll fight tomorrow. And that's why you have a world-class coach, and you allow him to make your career and, steer you through it. If it was me, I'd fight every night, and I would be there right now, but I wouldn't have the skill that I needed. I wouldn't have that strong striking that I developed over the last 2 years. Because before then, I never trained with Curtis Schuster until my layoff, and then I reached out and got him. I would never have done that. I'd been fighting, and my career would probably be over. Maybe it wouldn't, maybe it would, but...
I mean, do you look at some of these young guys and go, man, I could beat that guy. I've got the ability to beat that guy, and here he is on TV, or here he is getting a shot in the UFC.
It's funny you said that. From day one, Matt Hume would have world-class fighters come through my gym. As an amateur, I would train with Rich Franklin, to name a name, but many other Japanese fighters. And I was doing this as an amateur, and then there would be guys that come in from like Off the Tough show or whatever, and I would school them in the gym, and I was an amateur, so like I don't buy into any of that, and I just think people they try to be something they're not. They try to act like they're a world-class fighter, even though they don't have the skill sets to be the world-class fighter, and it takes 10 years to become that. And to say otherwise, I mean, yeah, there's prodigies, but you got to put in that time, and most of the guys aren't prodigies. There's probably only a couple of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So to say like I can train for a year or two and then, okay, I'm going to be on TV fighting the best, that's crap.
It's interesting that you say that. I haven't heard a fighter put it that way, but I think, and now I'm kind of going back through the Rolodex of all the different guys you've seen on Tough and all the different guys that you've seen come up, and it really is true, because in this sport, you want to have longevity. The key isn't about getting to the UFC. It's about being able to stay in the UFC and fight competitively there, and that's the best way to go about it. That's interesting to hear that perspective.
You're 100% correct on that. Like, I could go to the UFC tomorrow if you know the right people, and I could be fighting for the minimum purse.
Mm-hmm.
I could lose 2 fights, but I could be on TV and my UFC career is over. Or I can wait, go fight my 2 fights, win, get double the money for winning, and then go on and have a good career and try to be the top 5 fighter, if not fight for a world championship, and then actually get paid money. That fighter should get paid, because in the beginning you don't get your money's nothing.
It's crazy.
you fight because you love it, not because you're getting paid.
Yeah, I went with a fight. It was when Lieben was fighting with Matt Hume, and watched him cash his purse, and he won the fight. It was on TV. It was part of one of the first fight nights, and then you see what he made, and you realize that it's It's barely full-time work if you're fighting 3 or 4 times a year for guys that are early on. And Lieben went on to have a pretty successful and earned a lot of money, and things have happened since then. But I think people will be shocked when you see that like 15 and 15 is a really good payday early in your career.
And you got to pay your manager, you got to pay your coach out of that.
Yep.
And then at that point, he had to pay for all of his medical. I mean, UFC picks that up now, but before, no.
Yeah.
Do you look at the other promotions as something you would be interested in, or is it just UFC? I mean, obviously you've got options with Bellator, World Series of Fighting, ONE FC, Titan. There's a lot of next level promotions, and you fight for Super Fight League America. You're prominent there. Are those appealing, or is it I want to fight in the UFC?
No, I just want to fight the best guys at the end of the day, and it doesn't matter where. I just want to do martial arts and fight, and I can care less where it is. I'm not about being on TV. Yeah, I'll go fight on TV if that means I'm fighting the toughest guys. But I don't have the ego like that. I just want to fight, and I love to fight.
Who do you like watching? Is there a fighter out there?
My favorite is Fedor.
Really?
He's my favorite.
No kidding. Why?
I just like how he he was probably like he was a lower heavyweight, and he would have devastating power, and he would finish guys, and he wasn't the specimen to say and he figured out a way to win, and that's why I love him, and just the grit, and I just see him like being undersized, and he wins.
What was your favorite fight of his?
Probably when he got dropped by Randleman and came back and smashed
the
him.
slam.
It's a freaking cyborg, man. He gets dropped on his head, and within a minute of that, he's got the guy in an armbar.
Yeah.
It's absolutely. If nobody's ever seen it, go search Emelianenko and Randleman, because I've never seen anything like that.
No, that was an amazing fight, and ever since I saw that, I fell in love with him, and ever since I just kind of sad he didn't finish. He took some losses at the end of his career. Never got to fight Randy on his heyday. But
what do you make of Pride? Because Matt's been pretty involved in that promotion. There's guys that have come over from then. Most of the guys that we've seen come over to the UFC after that have been at the tail end of their careers, guys like Wanderlei, other people like that. It was such a high-profile promotion, and I think now that it's 10 years in the past, people don't really remember how incredibly both successful financially and then just glamorous that promotion was.
yeah, I think you just nailed it. It was very glamorous. Every fight on the card was a high-level fight with it was going to be a war. Very entertaining as as being a crowd or a fan watching the sport. I like the aspect that was in the ring too, and I don't know, the cage just seems like you can't see as good. But if you're a fan, like ringside, I don't know, just you get clearer vision of everything.
What about soccer kicks to the head?
And, they didn't sugarcoat the rules, there's soccer kicks to the head. And then they used to give the cards out for stalling.
Yeah.
And they need to do that. And then the whole scoring, we're talking about the scoring system. They scored the whole fight, not rounds.
That's true. Because you had it was a 10-minute round and then 2 5-minute rounds?
I think if that was a title, I think it was
title.
I think it was not. It was just a 10 and a 5.
10 and a 5.
Remember, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Hey, and talking about, and I remember that Fedor moment, him being slammed, and you're thinking, how do you recover from something like that? Has there been a moment in any of your fights where, whether it was a blow, whether you got taken down really hard, anything where you just internally you're going, okay, that hurt. I don't know if I can recover from that. Obviously, outwardly you're not showing it, but there ever been a moment where you had a little doubt as to whether you could carry on?
It's funny you say that. Like, not as a any of my professional bouts, but as an amateur, at one time, Matt would train us. He would, we would do grappling matches to get good at grappling. We'd do boxing matches to get good at boxing before we would even do MMA. So, like, I think I was 1-0 or 0-0 as a boxer, and I fought some boxers like 17 fights. And this was early. Like, I probably had like 5 MMA fights at that time. And then I got hit by a real boxer, and I was like, wow, he just rocked me. But to this day, that's the hardest I've been hit in any fight, and that was as an amateur boxer.
And that was a match, or you were just training?
No, it was an actual match.
Oh, okay.
Like, I think I was either 1-0 or 0-0. I think I only have like 3 boxing matches in I'm fighting some guy with 17 fights.
And you felt the difference, huh?
Yeah. And that's all he did was box. I think he was like a military boxer.
Yeah.
Had a bunch of military fights.
It's amazing, and hearing you say that, I think it clarifies for a lot of people. They always wonder about, we hear about McGregor and Mayweather, right? And things like that. And I'm like, it wouldn't be competitive. People don't understand the difference. If Mayweather were to step in your world or step in McGregor's world, the fight wouldn't last a minute. He would get tuned up. It would be over. McGregor, same thing. It might last longer. I think he could survive a little longer, but he's going to get picked apart and hit in a different way than he's been hit in MMA. It's a different world.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. If he was a boxer, he would be boxing, making probably more money as a boxer than he would an MMA fighter. And the other way, if it was reversed, they would be doing MMA. You can't go back and forth. I mean, if you were world class at both, that's that's a lot of hard work, and I don't think most people have the time to do that. But if you could, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, it'd be fun to watch, but I don't.
But yeah, I don't think either way they would last, or they could go in and dominate. Obviously, against the best in the world. No.
And we've seen it. James Toney is a world-class fighter, a world champion. Came in and was tuned up by Randy Couture immediately. I mean, it's
he made it a wrestling match and took him down and subbed him out. And he had no idea what he was doing on the ground.
And the same would be true for Mayweather. I'm telling you, unless he ran, it lasts less than a minute.
Yeah, it wouldn't last that long. I mean, maybe you could get out of the first round, but the knockout would come eventually. Just the hand speed and the angles and timing. He's just world class at that. And McGregor, good, but he's not world class at that.
Do you like McGregor?
I like the fact that he he's evolving the sport, and he's like a pinnacle fighter where he's doing a lot for the sport, like in pay. But I don't know. I think he's too cocky. That's just my opinion.
He's funny. His response was he gets fined more than the other guys get paid after the $150,000.
He is bringing eyes to the sport, though. I mean,
no, and you got to see that and respect him for that.
Yeah,
yeah. He's taken Chael Sonnen's playbook and ramped it up by 10. It feels like.
And Chael's a good fighter. Connor's an incredibly exciting fighter. I mean, Chael, we talked about that. Chael, his wrestling background, and he's kind of his profile doesn't match as florid as his fighting style is. Where McGregor's, I mean, he's a crazy striker in his game as well.
And then, like you said, I didn't think he would, last against Aldo, and he beat Aldo real quick, and he backed up what he said.
Yeah.
So you got to respect that in him.
Yeah. Well, it is Brett Knopp. Brett, it's really great to get a chance to meet you. We look forward to watching you fight. That'll be next weekend at the Emerald Queen.
Hey, one last thing before, sorry to cut you off. Do you like the team aspect? That's what's going on at Super Fight League. Last time I called your fight, I believe it was Seattle versus Los Angeles, and now it's Seattle versus, what is it? It's Central Valley. Do you like this? It's a different scoring system for people who aren't aware of it, but do you like that, or would you rather your fight is your fight and the other fights are the other fights, and nobody's depending on you for points to get the team win?
No, I think it's good for the promotion. It changes it up for the fan, so it gives them another factor for entertainment. Obviously, the fan pays the bills, so whatever we can do for the fan, I'm all for it. As far as it still doesn't really change me and my performance, like I'm going to fight one guy, but I really enjoy that for the fan.
Would it change, and the question I always had is, would it change your approach if you're the headliner and your team is down and the knockout obviously is worth more points, and somebody who's not a knockout puncher all of a sudden is in a position where I need a knockout for my team to win, and I'm always wondering, all right, does that change their game plan at all, or are they fighting for themselves?
I could see that it could in that regards, but as far as me, I don't think it ever will, because I'm a finisher. If I don't win by submission or knockout, to me it's like a loss. Like if I can't get that, then I'm nothing in fighting. I need to finish. Otherwise, I should go get a different job.
Finish or nothing.
Because nobody wants to see me win a decision.
Well,
including myself.
Brett, it's been really cool to get to talk to you. We look forward to following it. Best of luck against the Central Valley. That'll be next week in Super Fight League at Emerald Queen. All right, we'll get going and wrap this episode of Fight up next.
Team hit. Started from the bottom, now we're here. Started from the bottom, now my whole team in. Started from the bottom.
So So there's concern that equipping Greg Hardy with MMA skills is going to make him more dangerous, Bob?
Yeah, just looking at some of the headlines, reaction to his thought that he's gonna fight in the world of MMA. They've got Stephen A's picture there, so it doesn't surprise me that that's the comment that comes out of his dopey face. But yeah, it's not a move that's being greeted with a lot of, oh, awesome, can't wait to see what that's like. Nobody's curious. Nobody wants to see it. This is persona non grata right here. This is a man nobody wants to be around.
When you train MMA, do you have to formally make a pledge? I promise to use my powers for good and not evil.
He probably should do something because he doesn't feel like he's being welcomed into anywhere. And Jay Glazer is going out of his way to say, I hope nobody is going to be in a position to embrace this guy or teach him anything about our beautiful sport. And that's a guy that deals with all NFL types.
Yeah, now that to me was interesting. Not just because, look, I have a lot of respect for people that take a stand about things, and I certainly think that Greg Hardy is what he was accused of, and not just accused of, but a bench judge found that it was more likely than not that he had assaulted
You saw
this woman.
pictures.
Yeah, that knowing everything we know, you certainly to stand up and say, no, this guy shouldn't play in the NFL, this guy shouldn't play in the MMA, or shouldn't compete in MMA. At the same time, dude, the NFL, Jeremy Stevens made a living in that league for 6-7 years, and you're talking about a chronic drunk driver and someone who, what he was accused of doing in sexual assault in college, while he didn't end up getting charged, was everybody's. Let's not let everybody take the moral high ground here, because they've certainly been hypocritical in the past about the characters.
Guys that have killed people.
Yeah.
Leonard Little ran somebody over. He played in the league. Dante Stallworth ran somebody over, killed him. He played in the league. So you're talking about taking lives.
Yeah. So let's everybody, before they get up too far on their moral high horse, let's look at some of the characters and criminals that have been tolerated in the league. At the same time, there's something different going on with Greg Hardy, how universally villainized he has been. Probably more so than even someone like Ray Rice. It was on video, him striking his fiancée at the time. Some of it's the contrition. Some of it's the fact that it seems like his issues go beyond just one criminal night in which he assaulted a woman.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's an interesting reaction because, as you point out, we talk about this league has been littered with bad guys, whether it's Lawrence Phillips or Ray Caruth or any of these guys we've seen in the past. I mean, you've had some just true scumbags, Aaron Hernandez. I mean, the list goes on. We could sit here for days and talk about the really awful people that have played professional sports, especially in the NFL. Yet he seems to stand out for a lot of people, and I'm not really sure what it is outside of what we know. We saw the pictures of the girl. We saw the interview. Was it with Glazer where he was?
No, it was Schefter.
Schefter, okay, where there was no level of contrition in anything he said. It was like, hey, there are pictures here. He's like, yeah, but you can make pictures look like anything you want them to. I'm like, you know what, dude? You are making this so much worse. I mean, he came off so poorly in that interview, and I don't know if we just got a little insight into what everybody in the league knows about him. I'm not trying to justify anything he's done. I just don't know is he that much worse than some of the guys we've named. It feels like it is, just based on the way he's being, how he's not being embraced on any level whatsoever after a stint with the Cowboys.
And the other thing is MMA in general, and the UFC in particular, has fought pretty hard against the characterization of their fighters as sort of the mindless thugs, the barroom brawlers.
Yeah.
And to have someone where, well, I guess I can't make my living sacking a quarterback because I was too big a social menace in the NFL. I know, I'm going to go train MMA.
Well, and people look at that as good. Now you'll see what it's like to be on the other side of it, because you've got no training whatsoever. You can be big and strong and lift all the weights you want and paint your face and do all that scary stuff and tattoo yourself and get the mohawk. It's not going to help you, man. It's not going to help you. You can look. You hear the old saying, "He looks like Tarzan, fights like Jane." I think that could be very much be the case with Greg Hardy. He looks menacing. He's a big, strong, powerful, scary guy. He doesn't have any skills when it comes to this, and he's going to find that out really, really quickly.
What do you think? Why do you think that happens? Because I'll say this. We've seen through 20 seasons of The Ultimate Fighter, through other different things, we've seen guys that embody the personality type that we've all seen, which is the cocky punk who always threatens to fight people. Junie Browning. Chris Lieben was this way a little bit early on, of kind of that mindless idiot, and I think that he changed and grew as a person.
Right.
We just talked to Brett Knopp, who couldn't be further from that idea of that guy with the wild hair who's like, screw it, man, let's throw hands. Come on. You don't want to catch these hands. Like that, for the most part, you don't see that in MMA, which is exactly the place that you would think you see it.
Yeah, a few instances. Obviously, Conor McGregor's a guy. There are guys that do it and you understand their motivation. It's not about, I'm a wild, crazy man. You don't want any of this. He's you can tell it's marketing. He's drumming up interest, right? Same with Chael and people like that. It's not, I'm so nuts. You don't look at my hair. Look at these tats. Look at these muscles. Usually the guy that barks the loudest has the least bite. That's been true of bar guys. It's true of guys in high school. The bully, the guy who's going to go out of his way to tell you how tough he is and what he's going to do to you. I always felt like if you're going to sit there and give me your list of credentials, you don't want to mess with me. I pushed 250 10 times. I've been training this. You lost. If you feel like you're going to try to intimidate me with your credentials and how many push-ups you can do, you already lost, man. You know what I mean? It's the quiet guy. It's the guy that's not saying anything that you need to worry about. I always like seeing the guys that wanted to just yap, unprovoked. Those are the ones that are insecure. Those are the ones that are trying to compensate for the lack of skill that they have, or they're not sure about what it is they're capable of doing or taking, and they're just trying to set the bar right there. Like, hopefully I'm going to scare this guy out of actually challenging me.
Yeah, it's also that nobody who's great in MMA believes they're the toughest dude in there.
No, they all say it.
They all know that depending on how the fight goes, I could get knocked out, I could get submitted, and there's something about that level of respect that you need to have for your opponent is almost like an essential ingredient to succeed in the sport. Because the guy who thinks that I've got it all figured out and I'm going to be able to dominate who really believes that in their core. And I'm not talking about Conor McGregor saying, well, whoever you line up in front of me, I'll chop off his head and bring it to Dana and drink whiskey in the back room. But if there's someone who really believes that as soon as I step in the cage, I'm better than anybody that I'm going to face, you're going to run into somebody that's going to shake you of that illusion, and you'll probably run into them pretty quickly.
Yeah, you get humbled. I mean, the guys that are at the top of their game, whether it's Anderson Silva or John Jones or George St. Pierre, they all carried themselves with a ton of confidence, but a level of humbleness and understanding. And that's the thing, is the understanding that if I'm not on my game, things can really go wrong for me. And that's from their time in training and being submitted by guys when they're training jiu-jitsu or being rocked by a guy in sparring and understand, man, I'm able to be hurt. There are flaws. There are moments of weakness. I'm not impervious to any of this. I'm not impenetrable. My defense is, you know what I mean? It's they understand they're human. And there are other guys that just maybe haven't experienced any of that, feel like, look at him. I'm so much bigger than that guy. I've got so many more muscles than that guy. Listen to me. I'm so much louder. I'm so much cocky. I mean, it's sort of building up their own bravado to mask their own insecurities. I've always found that any guy that talked a lot of smack, whether it was just even on my level of training in boxing and jiu-jitsu, if there's a guy that was yapping all the time, he was the guy I wanted to mess around with, because there's something they're hiding. There's something they're trying to compensate for. And the guy that's always very cordial and, hey, how you doing? And you just see him in there all the time. Those are the ones you got to watch out for.
How funny was it? I hope everybody enjoyed the thing with Knopp when he talked about the time he got his bell rung.
Yeah.
Like where you really saw it in his eyes where he's like, he rocked me. And maybe it's the fact that he's so understated and he's this electrical engineer. But you hear him as he's talking, he's like basically like, yeah, dude, I was short-circuited there for a little bit. Like I wasn't moving right, and I've never been hit like that again.
Yeah, and he talked about the difference. And this is a guy who fights for a living, but fought somebody whose main discipline was boxing. And stating the difference. And yeah, it is a different thing. You know what I mean? It's sort of like hearing people talk about watching guys take batting practice, and the sound coming off this guy's bat is just different. It's hard to explain that. And that's what I try to explain to some of my friends who are always the meathead smack talkers who would fight guys in bars. They do very well, and thinking they could fight somebody at a high level that, like, this box, I could take that guy. Is like, you know what, man? That guy would hit you 15 times before you knew what happened to you. You've got no shot. You should just stop talking. It's a different world, and you don't understand it until it happens to you. And that's sort of what he talked about. It sort of represented that, wow, that's a different thing. That's a different element I'm dealing with. Somebody who fights as a boxer strictly, they deliver a punch different. They know leverage. They know how to turn the hip and just get a little bit more on that punch, more snap on that punch than a lot of MMA guys who will go in there and just throw big clubbing arm shots just to set up something else.
We got UFC 205 coming up.
Can't wait.
It's going to be a great card.
Can't wait. It's the best card they've ever had if everybody can stay healthy. Just fingers crossed, nobody drops off the card.
So who are we? We got opportunities for interviews. I'm going to send the email back a little bit later today. Who do we want to talk to? Do we want to talk to Stephen Thompson?
Yeah, I'd talk to Wonder Boy, Rashad Evans.
We got Rashad. Rashad's a great interview.
Chris Weidman's on the card, Frankie Edgar. I'll talk to any of those guys. I'll talk to any of them. I mean, if they were going to give us anybody on the card, there are obvious answers there. But, Rashad's a great guy, man. Rashad is a guy like Cormier that really won me over in defeat.
Mm-hmm.
In the way they handled it, in the way that they came out afterwards, and there was no Diaz moment. There was no I'm always getting the short end of the stick. They are always out to screw me, and none of that. It was, hey, you know what, man? I don't have any excuses. He's a better fighter. That was a rough night for me, and I got to give him credit. And you know what I mean? This really won me over with their level of humility after a loss. And I was like, you know what, man? That's how you do it. That's how you conduct yourself at this level when you lose, because as we just talked about, you understand at any moment you can lose.
Yeah, somebody's going to be there. Who's a worse loser, Aldo or Nick Diaz? Nick's a worse loser than Nate. Nate's not a particularly good loser, but Nate will at least kind of own up to it. Like when he lost to Benson Henderson here, he wasn't out there trying to say, like, yeah, I really won this
Even
fight,
when they
man.
admit they lost, they sort of diminish what the other guy did, because basically they're upset you didn't stand in front of them with your hands down and your chin up and let them hit you.
Like they like to do with their
chin it's like
out.
You didn't fight the way I fight, so you're not very good.
Yeah,
you won, but look how you fought.
209 Stockton.
Yeah,
Stockton.
I mean, you know what I mean? That's kind of their mindset. If you're not going to let me hit you, why is this fun? Okay, you won, but that's no good.
Who's the worst loser, Nick Diaz or Aldo?
Nick Diaz has got a much longer history of it.
He's never asked out of his contract, though, and said, I'm not even going to fight in here.
But he's got a long history of, I'm being screwed, the judges don't like you, you're going to throw kicks, okay.
That was Condit.
That's a long history of that, where Aldo, he'd been winning for so long before that fight, there was really nothing to complain about. So we saw the side that's always been there, but this loss exposed it for Aldo.
Yeah. How about Nick Diaz? Does he get bonus points, though, for once fighting a guy that he lost to in a controversial decision, then fighting him in the hospital? Does he get points for that?
He gives him points in the sense that he truly is real. What the Diaz bit is not a bit. It's exactly who they are at all times.
Nobody who knows, if you don't know what we're talking about, Joe Diesel Riggs, he was at one point a pretty prominent fighter. I think he's still fighting. He's certainly past his prime. Yeah, he's cooked, but he fought at a time when he was kind of an up-and-coming potential headline fighter, fought Diaz. It was a very close fight. Riggs wins the decision, and then they end up fighting again in the hospital later that night. And I don't think I've ever heard the full-on description, but I like to imagine them both removing IVs to go at it. Or would it be better if Nick Diaz is pulling around the little drip bag on the rolling cart as he's throwing right hands at him?
And they're both wearing gowns that are exposing their ass. They're wearing socks and a gown and nothing else.
And he's yelling, Nick Diaz yelling, Stockton! Stockton!
It's a good visual.
All right. This is Fight. We will be back next week. We really appreciate you guys listening to this. Spread the word. Tell people about this. iTunes. We've gotten some really, really great reviews on social media. But if you listen to it and you liked it, the best thing you can do is pass it along to other people so they find out about it. Thanks for listening. I'm Danny O'Neill with Bob Stelton. We'll be back next week with another episode. .209. Stop!